Hi everyone, Lee and Lorraine here, tuning in from the rebel city of Nottingham and specifically the Fashion, Textiles and Knitwear department at the Nottingham School of Art and Design. In this presentation, we'll be discussing the use of the standardised male mannequin in fashion design education, something that until recently we had overlooked. This matters because these mannequins perpetuate outdated and unrealistic expectations of masculinity, and this is at odds with the diverse body shapes, genders and identities we see in real life and certainly hear about from our global cohort of students. To begin, we'll draw on critical theories of body representation and identity to argue for a more inclusive approach to fashion design practice before moving on to discuss alternative pedagogies that acknowledge these issues and encourage staff, student and industry partners alike to critically engage with the concept of masculinity. Mannequins are a fundamental tool in fashion design education and are widely used across fashion, textiles and knitwear courses in the UK and beyond. But while they serve a functional purpose in terms of pattern making and prototyping, they also create significant limitations. Where male mannequins are concerned, their standardised form, which is tall, broad-shouldered and narrow-hipped, has become synonymous with the ideal V-shaped male body. However, far from being a neutral canvas, as it is often thought, they have an historical legacy rooted in Eurocentric and often colonial notions of masculinity, power and status. As Joanne Entwistle notes in her book The Fashion Body, Fashion Dress and Modern Social Theory, the clothed body is not just a physical form, but a site where cultural and social ideals are inscribed. Needless to say, this legacy doesn't reflect the diversity of real male bodies or the modern reality of gender fluidity. In real life, and particularly within our global cohort of students, we encounter a broad spectrum of body shapes, sizes, genders and identities, as you might expect. In fact, our research has been ignited by these very students who are often bemused at these exaggerated forms which represent a singular, idealised version of masculinity, which is so far removed from their own bodies or experiences, not to mention the individuals they design for. In the context of design education, this limits the students' capacity to engage with the true spectrum of human diversity, confining their creativity to predefined parameters. The notion of a singular ideal also aligns with Michel Foucault's concept of the docile body. Bodies are indeed controlled, not through force, but through more subtle means by way of the innocuous fashion studio. The suit, a staple of many male wardrobes, is a perfect example of this singular ideal and naturally follows the contours of the male mannequin. Wearing a suit in the 18th and 19th centuries became a way to signal allegiance to colonial systems of power, and subsequently this reinforced the dominance of Eurocentric ideals. As Christopher Bruard highlights in his book, The Suit, Form, Function and Style, this garment was imposed as a marker of civilised dress and often displaced indigenous clothing traditions. This continued to persist through the early part of the 20th century, where Western clothing was promoted as the standard for respectability and authority. By relying on these mannequins so heavily today, we are inadvertently perpetuating these colonial hierarchies and reinforcing these outdated ideals rather than challenging them. This lack of representation can only stifle creativity, and more so if students are not encouraged to think critically about the body or its cultural significance. Designing on mannequins that represent only one version of masculinity hinders students from developing a sense of empathy and understanding for a wider audience. It narrows their ability to innovate and challenge the status quo. As Judith Butler argues in their book, Gender Trouble, Feminism and the Subversion of Identity, gender and identity are fluid constructs, not fixed categories, yet the tools we use in the fashion studio suggest otherwise. How can we expect students to push boundaries when the tools they are given reinforce these traditional norms? To truly educate the next generation of designers, surely we must equip them to think outside of this narrow framework and beyond these constraints. Representation matters, and to build truly inclusive systems, we must actively confront, or at the very least acknowledge, the tools and practices that perpetuate exclusion. By using tools and practices that represent the full spectrum of human form, we can encourage students to question societal norms, challenge stereotypes, and design for real people. This, of course, is not a quick fix. New mannequins are very expensive, but a shift in mindset and design processes has the potential to elevate the quality of design and, more importantly, give students agency, positioning them as change makers equipped to redefine outdated norms and advocate for a more equitable and inclusive fashion industry. As Elke Gaugler and Monica Titten discuss in their book Fashion and Postcolonial Critique, education is a powerful site for dismantling historical hierarchies and fostering new modes of creative expression.
At Nottingham School of Art and Design, we have taken this to heart and rewritten our entire fashion design curriculum with this in mind. Systems thinking is very much at the heart of what we do now, as we believe it encourages a holistic understanding of interconnected structures, which in turn help students to see the broader context of their design work. It helps them to see how current systems have been shaped and to spot opportunities that make a difference. Our industry practice and menswear module has developed an approach that challenges students to not only question what masculinity means, but also to express their own identities, cultures, and lived experiences through their work. Quite simply, we begin the module with a single provocative question: what is masculinity? This question underpins work produced for the international brands we collaborate with, who often have a broad demographic and afford more flexibility for a dialogue with students on inclusive approaches to menswear. We have developed these industry relationships to enable more challenging conversations around codified menswear, inclusivity, fashioning masculinities, and cultural differences in mixed home and international teams. Engaging in industry projects during university education offers significant benefits by bridging academic learning with real-world applications. Such collaborations enhance students' practical skills, employability, and readiness for professional challenges. When universities and companies collaborate in team learning environments, they exchange information that creates new knowledge for both organizations and also the participating student cohort. These partnerships allow us to integrate practice-based cases into our teaching materials and provide students with opportunities to apply the question of masculinity and their learning to real-world projects. The question is fundamental to our module, as it challenges students to examine and deconstruct, quite literally, entrenched stereotypes of masculinity, including the rigid dress codes and cultural expectations associated with it. With staff research outcomes and a developing archive of garments and experiments, we hope to unpick the codes of dress and promote deeper and more meaningful conversations. By asking open questions via a series of collaborative workshops, we encourage students to reflect on their own identities and cultural backgrounds, fostering a more personal connection with their creative process. Specifically, we encourage them to explore and interact with imagery and artifacts that demonstrate different expressions of masculinity and how they may intersect with race, class, culture, and taste, by asking students to physically construct, deconstruct, and reconstruct these ideas together. This helps students in small teams to question, critique, and creatively reimagine what masculinity is today. Team-based learning offers several benefits that enhance student engagement and learning outcomes. For instance, we recognise the impact on students who engage in peer support and the positive impact this has on their work and progress. Team-based learning and peer support, with the addition of coaching-style pedagogies, ensure students are prepared for more complex applications of course concepts and allow large numbers of students to experience small group learning with expert tutors, technicians, and facilitators, enhancing engagement and connection with their university community. The students take the lead from open-ended questions and coaching, and they develop dialogue and a team point of view through their conversations, underpinned by critical theory. These have been powerful team-based learning activities rather than memorizing a lecture of menswear histories or responding passively to a trend. Students have opportunity and agency to share their own point of view while learning about compromise and cultural difference, sharing stories with their team. Coaching also offers a personalised approach that empowers individuals to unlock their potential, fostering growth beyond traditional teaching methods, because the teacher becomes a facilitator and the student team takes the lead. This flipped classroom has afforded many benefits, such as enhanced student engagement by shifting passive learning to active problem solving during class. Students take responsibility for their initial learning, resulting also in an increase of students taking a year out in industry at many high-profile brands across the UK, Ireland and Europe. These interactions prepare them for this challenging next step in their learning journey. Our approach to the menswear module equips students with both technical and critical skills and respect for cultures, but there is another layer. By encouraging students to engage with the emotional resonance of their garments and cultural artifacts, the students develop a more holistic and meaningful approach to fashion within a team project. We facilitate pen portrait sessions whereby students will explore their own identity as a consumer, both now and into the future. Through challenging prompt questions and again an openness, we explore our own wardrobes and the self to unpick our own decision-making, needs, desires, fears, challenges, and develop a portrait of a person rather than a profile. Rather than focusing solely on trends or market-driven demands, students consider how garments can evoke feelings, tell stories, or reflect personal or collective identities. This shift allows students to explore fashion as an expression of emotion, heritage, and individual experience, encouraging them to design with intention and meaning rather than simply adhering to the latest seasonal trends, which is key to our commitment to sustainable approaches and alternative systems thinking. We teach them the rules of the fashion system, but it's also a system that needs to be changed and challenged, and many of the rules need to be broken to progress towards a more sustainable future with empathy and understanding. This is significant because the historical framing of emotion as feminine and logic as masculine has shaped not only societal expectations, as discussed here, but also the way art and design has been taught, critiqued, and valued. We encourage students to analyse themselves as a customer in a meaningful way and have witnessed much more empathy and human stories of inclusive design because of this critical thinking. Through varied team physical and digital outputs, students compile a cohesive collection of both practice and academic research to present back to industry, displaying these insights through a yearly showcase while in the safe experimental space of their community and university. Now, to summarise key outcomes, cross-cultural and collaborative learning enhances mutual respect and understanding across the cohort, and by engaging with an industry partner, in addition to this, it means that students gain insight into how their work might influence and disrupt real-world practices. Fashion is a powerful medium for cultural change, and education is the starting point for that transformation. By sharing our pedagogical approach, we hope to inspire industry leaders and others to adopt more inclusive practices and challenge entrenched norms around masculinity and other aspects of the fashion industry, pushing them to evolve and innovate. We want to continue to work with flexible and inclusive brands that allow us to pose these questions and deconstruct menswear and explore the full spectrum of human identity, so our students can see themselves and their peers represented on their course of study, and eventually to challenge the industry from within to be more inclusive and representative of our communities. To present these outcomes in a yearly showcase and add to the continuing dialogue through research-informed teaching will be the main outcome from this academic year. And we hope to pose new questions and continually reinvigorate course content through this approach. Our planned menswear showcase will not only celebrate the work of our 18 teams and large student community, but also include practice-based research and reflections from staff responding to the same question, what is masculinity? And we will utilise these stories and narratives in subsequent years as artefacts to discuss with upside down pedagogies. To end, by embedding alternative pedagogies that prioritise self-reflection, storytelling, collaboration and agency, we are reshaping the way students understand and engage with masculinity. But this is more than just a teaching method, it's a call to action for the fashion industry to evolve and embrace the full spectrum of human identity.